This is the plaintiff, Sean Enright. He says he rented a room to the defendant, and when the guy moved out, he stiffed him on all the utility bills. The man is as shady as an oak tree, talks about everyone behind their backs, and is lazy to boot. That said, he's owed money and wants the $584.51 here and now. This is the defendant, Gary Ritzer. He says there was never any discussion about utilities when he moved in, and was understood they were included in the rent. Besides, he's the one who's lazy. He works very little, and on the rare occasion he does, he plays dead bodies as an extra on Law and Order. Owe him money? No way. He's accused of not paying for the juice.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
And welcome back to the People's Court. Next case in the docket, the plaintiff says the defendant rented a room from him and stiffed him royally. And speaking of stiff, the defendant says the plaintiff is a loser who plays dead bodies on Law and Order. It's the case of you're way too rigid.
Thank you, Douglas. Okay, Sean Enright, you are suing Gary Ritzer, your former tenant, for $584.51. $84.51 of it, utility bills that you say he owes you, and $500 of it for lost wages from having to pursue him for it. Tell me what's going on.
Okay. I lived in an apartment in Fresh Meadows, Queens. It was a 3-bedroom apartment. It was my uncle, myself, and another roommate who the lease was under. She had moved out, putting me as the new signer of the lease. Okay, so I had to find a new roommate. And I put an ad on Craigslist. Mr. Ritzer answered the ad. I met him. He seemed like a nice guy. He seemed responsible, what have you. At that point, I decided that I was going to move in with my girlfriend. So I got a third roommate. It was my uncle, Mr. Ritzer, and then another young lady.
Okay.
Anyhow, I had to figure out who was going to put what bills in whose name. I asked Mr. Ritzer if he'd put the Con Ed in his name.
When did you ask him that?
Right in the beginning, when he moved in.
After he moved in?
Before he moved in. Okay, so he said he couldn't put the Con Ed in his name. I agreed to put it in my name. He said...
Why couldn't he put it in his name?
Because he worked for a law firm and they're paying all his bills. He can't have anything in his name for whatever reason.
How does that make any sense? He's working for a law firm, they're paying all his bills, so he can't have anything in his name.
I didn't pry. Okay. I didn't ask him any questions. So then what? The bill came. I went back to the apartment and I asked him, okay, here's the, $83.51, and I agreed with him to split it 4 ways. He said, no problem, I'll pay it. I gave him my 1/4. I think it was like $13. And he said he'd cover the rest. Don't worry about it. This is nothing. So I trusted him, and I keep getting bills in the mail saying, you haven't paid, haven't paid. I call him up constantly. He never picks up his phone. I have to go to the house just to confront him with this little bill. No, no worries. I'll pay it. This goes on for months. I finally
there's a new bill with the next month's bill.
No, he switched it over to his name.
I thought he couldn't put it in his name.
Well, go figure. I don't know. Now he can all of a sudden.
All right, so what ends up happening? He doesn't pay you the $84?
Right, he doesn't pay.
Okay.
I get a bill from Con Ed for collections, and they're going to send it to collections and screw it.
Okay, do you have the bill?
It'll show you at the bottom here what they were telling me.
Okay, Mr. Ritzer, what's going on?
Well, Your Honor, Mr. Enright's story is somewhat correct, somewhat convoluted.
What was the discussion you had with him before you moved into this place about utilities?
There was none.
There was no discussion?
No.
Okay,
and
so
then,
nobody mentions it. You just know the rent is $700 and that you're subletting.
Right.
So did you assume that meant that utilities were included in the $700?
Correct. And then after he moves out, the landlord comes over and says, I'm going to put the lease under my name.
Your name.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm going to be responsible. Okay, no problem. The rent we found out was $1,400. The rent was $1,400.
Okay.
For the 3 bedrooms.
So you then figure out, you do the math, and you figure out that if you're paying $700,
I'm paying $7. She's paying $5. His uncle's paying $4. To me, that adds up to $1,600, and he doesn't even live there.
All right, but he's that may make you feel bad and that may make you angry, but the fact of the matter is this is a capitalistic society and nothing about that is illegal.
Okay, and the fact that, so now we move in, there's no lease agreement ever between.
Did the landlord seem upset that he had sublet or no? Like, in other words, it wasn't a surprise to the landlord.
I don't think the landlord was that thrilled with him. I have a very good relationship with her because she's a professional. I'm a professional. We understand each other.
You professional what?
Yeah.
I'm a paralegal.
Okay. And she's a what?
The landlord's a doctor.
A doctor.
Yeah.
And so the doctors and paralegals have a simpatico.
Well, we have a respect for each other.
Yes. Okay. Now, but she did not seem surprised at your presence.
No, not at all.
No. Okay. All right. Let me ask you a question. According to you, you did not discuss the utilities. Now, you submitted into evidence an affidavit from, is that the roommate?
Yes.
Can I see the original?
Yes, Your Honor.
Now, how do you figure your lawsuit is for $84.51 plus you're tacking onto that another $500 for lost wages?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I constantly had to go over to the house. It's been a headache. I've been over there like 6 times. Call him on the phone. He never picks up.
Oh, I might add, Your Honor.
Hold on. You might not add.
If a lease doesn't say anything about utilities, is the tenant automatically responsible?
Yes, he is.
You think so? The tenant just automatically assumes the responsibility if the lease has nothing?
I don't think so.
The landlord pays?
Yeah.
Why do you say?
Well, because if it's not in the lease, then...
Well, the tenant uses the utilities.
Yeah, but he's covered by...
Okay, get back to me, okay? Going inside the courtroom.
If you were a brain surgeon and you had lost, $30,000 by having to make a few calls and come to court, would that mean that you could turn an $84 lawsuit into a $30,084 lawsuit?
No, of course not. But
right.
I would submit for work. I work as a background actor in television and movies.
Okay, tell me about that.
You want to know about that?
I do want to know about that because one of the things he says in his answer to the complaint is that you played dead guys on CSI or Law and Order. What was it?
Law and Order or whatever.
Tell me about that.
No,
do you?
I don't. Not a dead guy. He's trying to be cute.
Darn it! I really wanted to hear about that.
All right, well, I can make something up.
No, I prefer you're not when you're under oath. That's sort of how I run my business.
Yes.
Okay.
No, never a dead guy. It's always living.
Okay.
He would be better off playing a deadbeat dead guy.
Okay.
So he's just trying to be cute. You know what I mean?
Well, let me tell you one of the things he's cute about. He's got an affidavit from the other rentor. Where is that?
The pot smoker?
The pot smoker you rented to? Okay. That says, her money was green enough, right?
So is her bud.
So is her what?
Bud.
I rented a room which was occupied by the plaintiff and who I was advised was moving out of the apartment. My rent was $500 a month. There was no written lease agreement, nor was I asked to sign any documentation of any kind. As the subject of utilities was never mentioned, I believe they were included in the rent. After he vacated, he entered the apartment and my room illegally, as he left some of his property on the premises without anybody's permission. How many times did he come in?
Twice.
Twice? Did she ever call the police or anything?
No. One time, it turned into a big fight. I went into the kitchen, and basically I tried to break it up without having to get the police involved.
Okay, and you submitted a brief over this?
Yes, I did, Your Honor.
This must have been fun for you. Sort of getting the chance to show off your wares. It's well done. It's well done. I read it.
Thank you.
All right, let me just ask you, where are the bills themselves? You brought me a collection letter and a receipt that you paid, but I have to see how the $84 happened. I have to know that they were usage during the month that you weren't there and that they were there at a minimum. Where's the actual bill?
I don't have it. I gave him the last one.
Yeah, but you can get it. All you have to do is go to the... It's your lawsuit. You're suing on a bill and you didn't bring the bill?
I brought the last letter that they sent
you. Yeah, but see, I don't know that that's not a past due something or another of yours. I have no idea what it is. So I have to see that it's usage of theirs at a minimum. And then we get to the whole question of whether utilities are included, utilities are not included. I don't believe you discussed it with him. Not just because he says you didn't discuss it with him. Not just because he has an affidavit from her, who you cavalierly call the pot smoker, where she says, hey, he didn't discuss it with me either. Okay. But also because of the fact that when I asked you about it, you said when he moved in, I talked to him about the utilities. And I said before he moved in or after he moved in. And then you said before he moved in. And so I don't know that you're so sure that utilities were discussed beforehand. But worse than that, even assuming I believed utilities were discussed beforehand and assuming everything you said was true, Okay? You don't bring me a bill for me to see that it's usage. And when you don't bring me the actual bill so I can see that it's usage in that month, we have a problem. Actually, we don't have a problem. You have a problem. Verdict for the defendant.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Well, this wasn't a drama on TV. This was a real deal, and you played a loser in this case. What's your feeling?
I knew the evidence was against me, but I'm not lying. I'm not a liar. He is. I swear to you, he said he was going to pay. We were going to split the Con Ed, and he got over. So.
All right. Maybe I believe you. Maybe I don't. Head right down this way. All right. Come on in here, sir. And satisfied on the outcome of this thing here?
I'm very satisfied.
What went wrong between the two of you guys? Good roommates at the beginning?
No, we never lived together.
Oh, you were just in his place.
He moved out.
He never moved in?
He moved out when I
Not even one day?
I don't even think one day.
All right. So where did this whole thing go wrong? Why didn't you talk about utilities before you went in there?
Well, usually when somebody moves out of an apartment, if they're smart, they take the utility bill out of their name. And if he would have done that, this never would have happened.
Good job on the brief.
Thank you very much.
Over to Harvey.
You know, there's no hard and fast rule on this, but if the lease doesn't say anything about utilities, if the tenant is using the utilities, probably a judge would say, look, you benefit from it, tenant, so you at least have to pay the share for which you benefited, but no more. In the law, it's called unjust enrichment, so probably advantage landlord.